Hey, this is Di, with a long overdue video for Binary Core Media, and this one's going to be on the subject of Diablo 3, its auction house, as well as its always online aspect. Now, I played Diablo 2 a lot back in the day, both offline and online, so I feel that, as a fan of this series, I'd quite like to discuss these elements of the game, and I'm here with someone. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Phasma. You might recognise me previously as Sparkles the Wizard in the Deathbank review, which was like a year ago now.
Yeah, a long time.
I've not actually played much in the way of Diablo games. I've never played Diablo 2. I think I did about half an hour World of Warcraft once.
And that's all of our viewers gone already.
Yeah. Bye, thanks for listening. But these issues that we're going to discuss today with the auction house and the always online aspect, I think influence multiple games, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this in future games, so I think it's something that we need to talk about.
Yep, so if we start then with the real money auction house, and our initial skepticism over it is generally that if a player is cash rich, regardless of whether or not they have a lot of time, then they can just simply buy the high-end items and perhaps then get an unfair advantage over other players. Also, there have been arguments saying that it's going to kill off some trading communities, which was a very large part of Diablo 2 online. I was part of it myself for a number of months, and it was very unique, I'll be honest, and it did have its advantages, but also its disadvantages, which we'll talk about in a moment. I think that first of all, it's really important to state that Diablo 3 is going to be a game which you can play as you want to play it. So there's a lot of players who say, this is going to give one player more advantage over another, and in PvP, that's of course going to be a bit of an issue. However, Diablo 2 and Diablo 1 before it has always had a strong element of your own adventure. It doesn't really matter what other people are doing online. You can party up and quest together with your friends, and you can still do that, and it won't have any effect on that whatsoever. So I think that the whole real money auction house is only going to affect a very small niche of it, and if you don't want to use it, then you don't have to. You can still use the normal auction house, which is also, some people actually object to the auction house in itself, saying that it's going to kill off the trade communities, which I think maybe you'd like to mention something about.
Although we're primarily talking about real money auction house here, I suppose it's worth addressing the actual auction house concept anyway. It's advantageous really to players because, let's face it, real money trading takes place in games anyway. This provides a legitimate route for the trading to take place, and it means there's less risk for those who want to buy items and those who want to sell it. It saves time where you don't have to spend ages trying to find someone selling the item you want, negotiate with them, and so on and so forth. It also means you avoid getting ripped off in that respect, which generally I think, including both real money and non-real money auction house, is definitely a bonus part. But there again, there is the trade communities issue, but you could argue that people can still trade outside of the auction house anyway, which makes that a bit of a moot point.
Yes, essentially it's just giving people a lot of choice. If you want to do your trade communities, that's fine, although you are going to have less people than before. If you want to just trade using in-game items or gold, that's fine, as long as they make gold a valuable currency, because in Diablo 2 it was pretty much useless. And of course, if you want to use your real-life money, that's fine. There was the argument about cash-rich players having advantages. However, if you're not cash-rich but do have time, you can still make a little bit of money off this auction house. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the amounts that people have suggested.
No.
You're not going to be able to make any more than minimum wage just because of supply. There's going to be such a tremendous turnover of items and such a massive supply of them that prices are naturally going to be kept down. Additionally, having a placement fee is going to reduce the amount of people just putting everything on the auction house.
Spamming the market, really.
Yeah, spamming the market. People who buy up all of the items and then relist them for higher amounts. It's too risky in that sense, and players aren't stupid enough to buy into that thing.
So I think we can sort of argue that, realistically speaking, the real money auction house is actually a good thing for everyone. I mean, you've got sort of a few main points here. The first is that those with lots of time can make a bit of money off the game. You can either cash out or you can trade using it to get items yourself.
Yeah, that's the important thing. If you don't have the money, you can make a bit of money by getting a bit lucky and getting an item, and then just use that money to get the item you really want. It's not going to be a full-blown kind of like what we saw back in the day, where people were buying online swords for hundreds of dollars. It's not going to be
or
that.
The EVE Online Monocle recently, which was $70 for a cosmetic
Oh
item.
yeah, but it's not technically a microtransaction. It's something completely different.
True, yeah.
Which we'll be doing a video on very shortly, actually. So please subscribe and you can have a listen to that afterwards. But if we perhaps move on to the next thing which we'd like to really talk about, which players are concerned about, which is the always online DRM, which you mentioned. So there's going to be no offline mode. What do you think of that?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. With DRM, it's a bit of a contentious issue anyway, and the problem I see with it, if you have a game where you have a single player aspect that doesn't rely on being on the internet, I don't like the idea that people can't play something they bought for if they don't have the internet connection. But
yeah, because there was that case with, was it Assassin's Creed 2?
Creed, I think it was 2. I think Brotherhood had the same, where this is a completely offline game. Well, 2 was at least, and if you're playing it, you had to have a constant connection. So if your connection dropped, you got kicked out of the game, which I really don't agree with that, because at the end of the day, you've bought the game. And the other issue that I have with this is the fact that if you've got an offline game, pirates will crack it and they'll play it and not have to be online, which means your DRM then is only effectively penalising customers who have paid for the game legitimately.
Yeah, it's going to be a different situation with Diablo 3, which I think people will primarily see as an online game. Same really with Diablo 2, but of course back in the day, people didn't really always have internet connections. I remember playing it on like a dial-up modem and stuff. So, but it's going to be largely different. And I think that we had exactly the same reaction with StarCraft 2. When that was released without an offline mode, players were wondering why they can't, for example, play the campaign offline. It's really important to state, actually, they did eventually introduce an offline mode, and I think that it's a wise business decision for Blizzard, because of course naturally they have the right to protect their property and sell the game legitimately, but they can always add these features on at a later stage.
Which brings on to another issue, which is that it's a deterrent after release date, because I expect that the most demand for a game is shortly after it's released. So if you're forcing people to be online until it's pirated, some people who might originally pirated the game will buy it because they're not prepared to wait until someone has cracked it so that they can play offline and not worry about the DRM.
Yeah, like Blizzard probably aren't worried about people cracking Diablo 2 right now, because they've already made their money off it. So
yeah.
It's not a big issue for a lot of gamers. I can understand the gripes for it, but Blizzard have a product to release to market, and the sooner they do that, the happier the majority of their fans are going to be. And if that means shipping it without an offline mode, that's fine. They can always put it in afterwards, and I think that's probably something which they're going to consider at least.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm still against DRM in terms of the principle, but I can see the business reasons behind it. And let's face it, at the end of the day, Blizzard is a business. They're in the business of making games, and the money that we spend on their games is money that goes straight back into developing it, so we can have more fun doing what we want. Yeah,
I think a lot of people have this impression of Blizzard that they're just basically a puppet for Activision, and of course that's how business works. There are shareholders at the end of the day who will need to be making money, and Blizzard will be getting a bit of a cut from the auction house. Also, the always online is going to effectively ensure that people are paying for their game and therefore increasing their profits. And this is fine. They're not a charity, they are a business at the end of the day, as you mentioned, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I think people need to have a bit of faith in Blizzard. And people had skepticism over StarCraft 2, ended up being an awesome game, and Diablo 3, let's face it, is going to be amazing. There's no denying that, and I think everyone's really looking forward to the beta later this year. But I think on that sort of note,
time to wrap up.
yeah, I'd say so.
Thanks for listening. I'm going to take this moment to say, visit our forum. It's binarycore.org. It's awesome and all that sort of stuff, and I'll let Di say the rest.
Yeah, guys, appreciate a subscription, because we've got a video coming up about the issue of DLC. There's a lot of
microtransactions and so on as well.
Yeah, they're becoming way more common, and they're making companies a lot of money, but a lot of people are not happy with them, and we'll be discussing that very soon. So send a subscription our way, and we'll see you in a bit.